From wrestling ring to box office king. Picture this. A young man sits in his apartment with $7 in his pocket. His dreams of playing professional football have just collapsed. His future looks uncertain. Fast forward a couple of decades, and that same person is standing atop Hollywood, earning more per film than most of us will see in several lifetimes. This isn't a fairy tale. This is the story of Dwayne Johnson. But here's the thing about success stories. We love the highlight reel, the championships, the blockbusters, the Instagram posts with millions of likes. What we don't always see are the weird turns, the lucky breaks, and the moments when everything could have gone sideways. So let's slow down. Let's walk through this journey properly, because the path from wrestling tights to three-piece suits is stranger and more interesting than you might think. The foundation. Dwayne Douglas Johnson entered the world in 1972 in California, but his childhood was anything but settled. His father, Rocky Johnson, was a professional wrestler, and if you know anything about the wrestling circuit in the 70s and 80s, you know it meant constant travel, modest paychecks, and a lot of uncertainty. The family moved frequently: Hawaii, Pennsylvania, various spots in between. Young Dwayne watched his father perform, watched him struggle, watched the wrestling business from the inside. It wasn't glamorous. It was hard work wrapped in showmanship. Here's a detail most people skip over. Dwayne was a big kid, not just tall, but genuinely large for his age. This wasn't always a blessing. He got mistaken for being older, which meant different expectations. He also dealt with depression as a teenager, something he's spoken about candidly in recent years. But size has its advantages in certain arenas. Football became his ticket. He was good, really good. Good enough to earn a scholarship to the University of Miami, where he played defensive tackle for the Hurricanes. They won a national championship in 1991. Everything seemed to be lining up perfectly. Then came the injury, a shoulder issue that required surgery. Then came the next blow, being passed over by the NFL. He briefly joined the Canadian Football League, playing for the Calgary Stampeders. The salary? $250 per week. It didn't last. He was cut from the team after just 2 months. And that's how Dwayne Johnson found himself back in the United States, living in a small apartment with exactly $7 to his name. The football dream was over. He was 23 years old and had to figure out what came next. Reinvention in the ring. When your father and grandfather are both professional wrestlers, there's a fallback plan sitting right there. It's not necessarily the plan you want, but it's available. Dwayne called his dad, said he wanted to give wrestling a shot. Now, professional wrestling in the mid-90s was entering a new era. It was becoming more theatrical, more character-driven, more willing to blur the lines between sport and entertainment. The WWF was locked in fierce competition with World Championship Wrestling. They needed stars, fresh faces, people who could perform in the ring and command attention on the microphone. Dwayne trained, paid his dues in small venues, and in 1996, he made his WWF debut at Survivor Series as Rocky Maivia, a combination of his father's and grandfather's ring names. He had the look, the athleticism, the pedigree. The audience hated him. Not because he was bad, he was fine. He was perfectly acceptable, and that was the problem. He was being presented as a clean-cut, smiling good guy in an era when audiences wanted edge. They wanted attitude. They chanted, "Die, Rocky, die," and "Rocky sucks" at him during matches. Most wrestlers would have crumbled. Dwayne did something smarter. He leaned into it. He turned heel, as they say in wrestling, became a villain, joined a group called the Nation of Domination, and most importantly, he started calling himself The Rock. This is where the magic happened, because The Rock wasn't just a wrestler, The Rock was a character. Arrogant, hilarious, quick with insults. He had catchphrases that audiences started repeating. "Can you smell what The Rock is cooking? It doesn't matter what you think. Know your role and shut your mouth." He wasn't just performing moves in the ring anymore. He was performing comedy, drama. He was connecting with millions of people through television screens every single week. By 1998, he was one of the biggest stars in professional wrestling. By 1999, he'd won multiple championships. He was headlining WrestleMania. He was appearing on talk shows. He wrote an autobiography that became a bestseller. Professional wrestling gave Dwayne Johnson something beyond fame. It gave him training in performance, in thinking on his feet, in reading an audience, in understanding how to craft a persona that people wanted to watch. These skills, it turns out, transfer pretty well to another industry: the Hollywood gamble. Here's the tricky part about being a professional wrestler who wants to become a movie star. History is not on your side. Hulk Hogan tried it, made some films. They weren't exactly Oscar contenders. Other wrestlers had attempted the jump with limited success. Hollywood tends to see wrestlers as novelties, not serious actors. But The Rock had something working in his favor: charm, genuine, undeniable charisma that translated through the camera. Casting directors noticed. His first major film role came in 2001 with The Mummy Returns. He played the Scorpion King, a villainous character who appeared maybe 10 minutes of screen time. The special effects used to bring his character to life were questionable at best. Critics laughed at the CGI. But audiences responded to him. The studio greenlit a spin-off film, The Scorpion King, which came out in 2002. Dwayne Johnson received $5.5 million for that role, setting a record for an actor in their first leading part. The movie made money, not critic darling money, but box office money, which in Hollywood is the kind that matters most. Now, you might think this is where the story becomes a smooth upward trajectory. It wasn't. For several years, Dwayne made a lot of mediocre action films: Walking Tall, Doom, Gridiron Gang. Some were modest successes, some weren't. None were game changers. He also made a crucial decision during this period. He asked people to call him Dwayne Johnson instead of The Rock. He wanted to be taken seriously as an actor, not just as a wrestler playing dress-up. This might have been a mistake. His films underperformed. Studios started losing interest. By the late 2000s, his Hollywood career was looking shaky. He needed a reset. The comeback formula. Sometimes the best career move is embracing what you're actually good at instead of what you think you should be doing. In 2011, Dwayne Johnson joined the cast of Fast 5, the fifth installment in the increasingly ridiculous and increasingly profitable Fast and Furious franchise. He played Luke Hobbs, a federal agent built like a tank who could clothesline people through walls. It was perfect. The film let him be physically imposing, funny, and just serious enough. He didn't have to pretend to be a subtle character actor. He could be The Rock again, just in a different context. Fast 5 made over $600 million worldwide. Suddenly, studios remembered why they'd been interested in him in the first place. Dwayne started making smarter choices. He picked projects that played to his strength: big action films, family comedies where his size created humorous contrast, franchise films with built-in audiences, Journey 2, The Mysterious Island, G.I. Joe, Retaliation. Then came San Andreas in 2015, a disaster film where he basically fought earthquakes. It made nearly $500 million. But the real turning point was Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle in 2017. A sequel to a beloved Robin Williams film from the 90s could have been a disaster. Instead, it was a massive hit, earning nearly $1 billion worldwide. Dwayne played a nerdy teenager trapped in the body of an action hero, which gave him room to be funny and vulnerable while still doing action star things. He'd figured out the formula: be likable, be funny, be genuine, and yes, save the world from various threats while wearing a tight shirt. By 2019, he was the highest paid actor in the world, earning nearly $90 million that year alone. He appeared in 3 major films: another Fast and Furious entry, the Jumanji sequel, and Hobbs and Shaw, a spin-off focused on his character. Building an empire. But here's where Dwayne Johnson separated himself from other action stars. He didn't just act in films, he produced them. He built a production company, $7 Productions, named after that moment when he had $7 to his name. He started controlling his projects, shaping them, making sure they aligned with his brand, which he'd carefully cultivated: hardworking, family-friendly, positive, motivated. His social media presence became a masterclass in personal branding: workout videos at absurd hours of the morning, motivational messages, behind-the-scenes content from his films, posts about his family, the occasional tequila promotion, because he also co-founded a spirits company called Terramana. Everything interconnected. The films promoted the brand promoted the tequila reminded people he was a businessman, the workout posts reminded people he was disciplined, the family posts reminded people he was relatable. In 2021, he returned to wrestling for a brief appearance, reminding longtime fans where he came from. In 2022, Black Adam gave him a superhero franchise, even if the film's reception was mixed. He executive produces the HBO series Young Rock, a sitcom based on his own life. He's appeared in commercials, video games. He voiced Maui in Disney's Moana, introducing himself to an entirely new generation of fans who don't care about wrestling or action films. Forbes has consistently ranked him among the highest-paid entertainers on the planet. His estimated worth is somewhere in the neighborhood of $800 million. Some estimates go higher. So what do we take from all this? Dwayne Johnson's journey wasn't a straight line. It was a series of pivots: football to wrestling, wrestling to acting, acting to producing. Each time he learned, adapted, figured out what worked and what didn't. He got lucky, being in the right place when the Fast and Furious franchise needed a boost, having the physicality that works for action films in an era when audiences globally respond to spectacle. But he also worked absurdly hard. He's famous for his workout schedule, starting before dawn, for being professional on set, for treating everyone with respect. These things matter more than people think. And perhaps most importantly, he stopped trying to be something he wasn't. He embraced being The Rock, just in different contexts. He let himself be funny and charming instead of trying to be a serious, dramatic actor. There's something almost old-fashioned about his career. He reminds people of the action stars from the 80s and 90s, big personalities, reliable entertainment, stars who felt accessible despite their fame. From $7 in his pocket to hundreds of millions in the bank, from football washout to wrestling superstar to Hollywood titan. It's an American success story, complete with setbacks, reinventions, and that essential ingredient: someone who refused to stay down when things went wrong. The kid who watched his father struggle in the wrestling business became one of the most successful entertainers on the planet, not by following a plan, but by adapting when plans fell apart. And if you ask him, he'll probably tell you he's still got more work to do, because that's who Dwayne Johnson is: always working, always building, always reaching for the next challenge, though probably with more than $7 in his wallet this time. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into The Rock's journey, consider subscribing for more videos about the people who shaped entertainment. And remember, even when you're down to your last $7, the story isn't over. It's just getting started.